Mahabharata Series Episode 1, The Epic Begins, What Sparked the Greatest War. Welcome to the timeless saga of the Mahabharata, the greatest epic ever told in the history of mankind. But before we dive into the war, the heroes, and the gods, let us pause for a moment and ask, what if everything you thought you knew about destiny was wrong? What if the true cause of the bloodiest war in history was not pride or power, but something far more human, something we all live with every day? This is not just a story. It is a mirror held up to humanity, a reflection of our fears, hopes, mistakes, and greatness. The Mahabharata is a storm of emotions, an ocean of questions. Who is right, who is wrong, what is dharma, and when duty and love pull you in opposite directions, which do you choose? Before the battlefield of Kurukshetra turned red, before brothers raised weapons against each other, there was silence. Not the peace of harmony, but the silence before a storm, heavy, sacred, trembling with fate. This chapter begins in that silence. Let us travel back thousands of years, into the mists of myth and memory, where gods walked among men, and mortals dared to question the heavens. The world was young then, but the hearts of men were already old, burning with ambition, haunted by legacy, and chained to the will of karma. The seed of a universe. The Mahabharata was not just written, it was born. Not in ink, but in spirit. Not on paper, but in breath. It was born from the soul of one man, Krishnadwaipayana Vyasa. A sage, a poet, a philosopher, and above all, a witness. Vyasa saw the crumbling of Dharma and felt the need to preserve what was left through the power of story. But who was Vyasa? He was not born in a palace or in the fire of battle. He was born on a riverbank, the son of a fisherwoman and the sage Parashara. His life was marked by solitude and silence. But within him burned a flame, the desire to understand the universe and humanity's place in it. He meditated for years. And in that silence, he saw it all: the rise and fall of kings, the clash of cousins, the betrayal of brothers, the teachings of Krishna, and the destruction of Dharma. He did not just write the Mahabharata. He lived it. He passed it on to his disciple Vaishampayana, who recited it at the snake sacrifice of King Janamejaya. And through that oral tradition, the epic spread from village to village, heart to heart, across generations. The world of Dharma. The Mahabharata takes place in a world where Dharma, righteousness, was not a law written in stone but a choice made in pain. Dharma did not mean doing what was easy. It meant doing what was right, even when the heart broke. And it was this fragile, painful, sacred idea of Dharma that would be tested again and again. We must remember, the Mahabharata is not a tale of perfect heroes. It is a story of flawed men and women, of Bhishma, who swore away his happiness, of Draupadi, whose dignity was torn in public, of Karna, who fought for honor despite rejection, of Duryodhana, whose pride consumed him, and of Arjuna, who hesitated even with the bow in his hand. None were purely good. None were purely evil. All were human. Shantanu and the Ganga. To understand how it all began, we must look at King Shantanu of Hastinapura. A noble ruler, wise and just. One day, while walking along the banks of the sacred Ganga, he saw a woman radiant, serene, otherworldly. She was the river goddess herself. Without asking who she was, he fell in love. She agreed to marry him on one condition: he would never question her actions. Shantanu, blinded by love, agreed. They married. She bore him a son and drowned the child in the Ganga. Shantanu was horrified, but bound by his promise, he said nothing. This happened 7 times. 7 sons, drowned. 7 deaths, suffered in silence. When the 8th child was born and she moved to the river again, Shantanu broke his silence. He begged her to stop. And she did. She revealed her truth. She was Ganga, and the children were the 8 Vasu celestial beings cursed to be born on earth. Their time was over, she had released them. She left him, but the 8th son survived. He was named Devavrata, the boy who would become Bhishma. Bhishma's vow. Devavrata grew up to be a warrior of unmatched skill. He was noble, wise, and powerful. But fate was not done with him. Years later, Shantanu fell in love again with Satyavati, a fisherwoman. Her father agreed to the marriage, but only if her children could inherit the throne. This meant Devavrata would have to give up his claim. Without hesitation, he did. But that was not enough. The king still feared conflict. So Devavrata took a terrible vow: he would never marry, never father children. He became Bhishma the Terrible for the vow he took. The gods showered flowers from the sky. The world trembled at his sacrifice. For Dharma, for his father, he gave up everything. But this vow, noble as it was, would set in motion the downfall of a dynasty. The throne passed to weaker heirs. The seeds of conflict were sown. The rise of Vyasa. Satyavati bore 2 sons, Chitrangada and Vishitravirya. But both died young, childless. With the throne in jeopardy, Satyavati remembered her son from before Vyasa. Vyasa agreed to father children with the widows of Vishitravirya through an ancient practice, Nyaga. The results were 3 sons: Dhritarashtra, born blind; Pandu, born pale; Vijaya, born of a maid, wise but ineligible to rule. The line was saved, but again, the foundation was shaky. Fate, once twisted, never straightens without pain. A mirror to our time. The Mahabharata is not ancient. It is eternal. It tells us, one act of ego can echo through generations. One silent sacrifice can shift the balance of power. One curse, one broken vow, one unfair choice. These are not just stories of kings. These are reflections of us. We all carry our own Kurukshetra within a battlefield of choices. We are all sometimes Arjuna, torn and afraid. We are all sometimes Bhishma, bound by duty. We are all Draupadi, wronged and silenced. And sometimes, we are Duryodhana, consumed by pride. The silence before the war, the past of these characters, is not just prologue. It is the heart of the Mahabharata. Before the arrows fly, we must understand the hearts that break. Final reflection. Before swords are drawn and armies march, there is always a moment of choice. The Mahabharata teaches us that destiny is not carved in stone, it is carved by decisions. By vows made in silence. By truths never spoken. By sacrifices that go unseen. Bhishma's vow was noble, but was it wise? Satyavati's ambition saved a throne, but did it curse a generation? The silence of one king, the desire of one queen, the ego of one prince, all ripple outward like stones cast into a still lake. In life, we often believe our actions are our own. But in truth, they become a part of something greater, a chain of cause and consequence. And so, we must ask ourselves, when we choose silence over truth, or pride over peace, are we sowing the seeds of our own war? But remember this. The war of Kurukshetra didn't begin on the battlefield. It began in the shadows of the palace. In whispers behind silk curtains. In silent glances, in broken oaths, in unspoken envy. A blind prince will soon wear a crown. A cursed king will struggle to rule. And 2 branches of one bloodline will grow into rival armies. Fate is sharpening its sword. Because the next chapter in the saga is not about kings. It's about sons born of gods, raised in fire and fury. Pandavas, Kauravas, brothers by blood, enemies by destiny. But before their war begins, a dice will roll, a queen will be humiliated, and Dharma will begin to crumble. Then don't stay silent like Bhishma. Backhand index pointing right like this video. Push pin comment your thoughts below. Bell and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter in this eternal saga. Because the Mahabharata isn't just a story of the past. It is a warning for the future. And the war is only beginning. Take care, met soon.